So welcome everybody. Once again, for everyone that just joined in that missed the last intro, I am Jessica Fields. I, along with my partner, Brad Bateman, who has graciously let you into the Zoom, run Beyond Brooklyn. We are based in Brooklyn, and we help people figure out where to go from Brooklyn. We're excited about this collaboration tonight with Upstate Curious. We've got Megan Brenn White. She is famous up there. You guys probably know her from the Upstate Curious app, from all of the stuff that she's done over the last few years. So first, why don't you say hi, Brad, so you pop up on everyone's screen, and then we'll get to Megan.
Yeah, so I just want to expand a little bit further upon that. Once again, my name is Brad Bateman of the Beyond Brooklyn team. Jessica Fields and I, we are Compass agents down in Brooklyn. So we represent all around Prospect Park in Brooklyn, but we also run this Beyond Brooklyn business, which for years we discovered that there's a need for people who live in Brooklyn in the city that oftentimes they decide to explore for either leaving the city permanently or potentially buying a second home. And they're really, stuck going on Zillow or Trulia or StreetEasy to kind of learn about what their options might be. And we thought it would be much more helpful for our community here in Brooklyn if we could create a platform where we could help educate people on what their options are, what the communities are like in the different suburbs and all the way upstate as well. So not only do we do events like this with Megan, teaching people about upstate, but we also educate people about Westchester and New Jersey and Long Island. And we will be having other Zoom events. We'll be emailing you about those as well, for those of you who are interested in any of those areas too. So once again, my name is Brad Bateman of the Beyond Brooklyn team. And Jessica, I'm going to turn it over for you while I admit some more people in.
Fantastic. Well, so without further ado, I want to introduce Megan Brenn White. I'm gonna let her fill you in on her bio. It's pretty awesome. It's kind of the dream that we all wish that we were living. So Megan, please take it away and tell us about your background.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me, Brad and Jessica, everyone for being here. It is so much fun because I lived in Brooklyn for 16 or 17 years. And let me just start by saying, I never thought I would leave. And also my husband was like, we were living in Clinton Hill. He taught at Pratt. My best friend from college lived across the street. We had like an amazing life there. And so I will, I would like to preface this just by saying that I did not like flee the city. I just sort of opportunities opened up and the timing was right. And and how I got there felt like the biggest zigzag on earth. And now that I'm here, feels like a perfectly linear career path to where I am today. But through studying political science and international relations, I was an intern at the German parliament in Bonn for an entire year, which is real weird when it was before it moved to Berlin. Did my master's in London. I came back to New York and I was got into the first .com boom, which was hilarious. And right before our website was gonna, we actually have our IPO, the whole thing crashed. But I had bought my first apartment already in Park Slope. And so I had options at a time when I went out to, well, I'll just start off by insulting everyone, I guess. No, I'm not insulting anyone. It was a long time ago. It was like in the late 90s. And I was living in Union Square and a friend of mine wanted to look for a place, I think in Brooklyn Heights or Cale Gardens, I can't remember. And I literally from Union Square to Brooklyn Heights, I was like, this is taking forever. I can't believe, how could anyone live in Brooklyn? Which I can't, it's like one of the shortest trips you could possibly take. And then I ended up living in Park Slope and then later Gowanus, later, Clinton Hill. But I ended up working in international higher education, doing marketing for universities and particularly marketing for international universities, which was a lot of what we call location marketing. So how could you attract students from Algeria to go to, school in Germany, or students from China to go to do a specific program in Brazil? And so a lot of what I spent, again, feeling seemingly unrelated to real estate, a lot of the time I spent was on thinking about how people interact to places and how you can communicate about places digitally. So, this is what that is the primary thing I've been doing for most of my adult life. And and I always wanted to do real estate instead, and thought, I've got my master's degree, I'm doing all these things, I'm flying around the world talking about all this fancy stuff, and it just kept having the itch. So I finally when we decided to get a place up here, which I could, happy to talk more about later, this is the abbreviated version. I decided I would get my license so my plan was to be a real estate agent in both places. And I thought we were going to be moving up here part-time. We ended up deciding to move up here full-time. And I've never sold any real estate in Brooklyn, except for our own 2 apartments as for sale by owner. Because luckily I am a real estate agent now. So I might have had some kind of a knack, but I would not recommend it. And I came up here.
So Megan, where did you first land?
I first landed here. So this house is a house that we purchased in Kerhonkson, which is in Ulster County. And we bought it as a weekend place. So it has this amazing, great, big, beautiful living room. And the bedrooms are this big and the closet is even smaller. Like the bedrooms are actually smaller and the closets are smaller than where we lived in Brooklyn, which is less awesome for full time, but this happens. And I had never been here before. I'd never been to Kerhonkson. Someone told me it was nice. We were under contract on a place between Woodstock and Saugerties. It fell through, and through a weird series of events, someone ended up kind of showing me this home. This was before I had my license, fell in love with it, and have now, I would have a hard time moving anywhere outside of our little hamlet.
So tell us a little bit about Upstate Curious, because this is it's completely exploded. I think so many people are on this call because they are big fans of Upstate Curious and followers on social media. How did Upstate Curious come about, and what does it do?
Yeah, so it's funny because a lot of people I've realized don't actually know what we do because we're very low key salespeople, but we are in fact a real estate team. We we represent buyers and sellers, not so many rentals up here, and we are based at Keller Williams Realty Hudson Valley North, which is an office in Kingston. But because I realized that pretty quickly on when I was thinking about starting a team, or even when I was working alone, I realized that people had huge search areas generally. So we cover 9 counties. So basically anywhere that you could possibly think of might be considered the Hudson Valley or Catskills or kind of within weekending territory of upstate. We got you, so now we have the team, so I'm the head of the team. I don't work with clients myself anymore. We have 10 buyers agents, 3 agents who just do listings, and various admin folks. And we launched the app that Jessica mentioned, which was the one thing I was like, this is for this audience. It's such a good thing to mention because partially we created the app because there's a lot of questions that we can't answer legally as realtors for very valid fair housing reasons. So if you, say, hey, I want to live somewhere as politically diverse as, or, politically diverse is probably the wrong term, that has similar politics to Brooklyn, or I want to live somewhere with great schools, we can happily point you to resources about it, but we can't just casually chit chat about things like that. The app is just a big, old, wild, fun forum where there's now over 6,000 members, also just called Upstate Curious. And you can ask those questions and people, will happily answer that. When you buy a place up here, they will also answer questions like, who knows a roofer near me? Who is a great landscaping person? Who wants to take dog walks? I can socialize my puppy. It's very adorable.
Went onto the app just this afternoon because I am about 24 hours away from signing a contract on my own upstate weekend home. And I was like, I need homeowners insurance. Where am I going to find this? So I just went to the app myself. So kudos for providing a great resource for all of us.
I'd like to add on to that as well. I have a personal story too that I could share that Megan's aware of. I purchased a home up outside of Hudson just about a year ago, and it was represented by the Upstate Curious Team. So they were the listing agents. Chelsea was the listing agent, and I absolutely love my home. I've downloaded the app. I have it on my phone. I get the notifications quite often, and it's really cool to see what people are kind of interacting about. The child care parenting one is quite useful. I have 2 young kids with a third on the way. That's why we need the space outside of the city so we can have some sanity. But yeah, going on there and people asking questions like, hey, where's the nearest place to have a play date? Or what's the situation with babysitters up here? Or does anyone have a nanny? And so it was helpful to see that there was a place that you could go to and resources available that otherwise are really quite hard to find up there.
Well, and we had, I mean, I had clients who were looking for a new nanny and they're up in Catskill. And somebody who I know told me that they had seen the posting on the app and they're here in Kerhonkson. I mean, that's well over an hour away. I don't know like where else you would post it to, to make that kind of a connection. So it's really, I don't know. I kind of love that. And that just is sort of runs itself in a fun way on the side of our business.
And the one thing I wanted to touch upon is that, I love how you have, listing agents, sellers agents, and you have 10 buyers agents, and you cover such a large geographical area. And I've been going up to upstate for over 20 years now and love where I love to go, but I explored everywhere else beforehand. And I've, over the course of the years, found that so many people leave Brooklyn and they just want a place in the woods. They don't have like I need to be here or I need to be here. They have an idea of what they want, but they don't know where they're going to land and how to do that. So having a team that covers such a big geographical area is really helpful, because oftentimes, and you can tell us this, people start thinking they're going to be around Woodstock and they end up, in a totally different region. And there's so many factors that go into it.
Well, and I mean, a lot of people only know the places that they've been, which makes sense, or maybe that they've heard of. So it's like you have this huge, vast area with so many awesome places. And the weird thing about our team, and I have no way to like fix this, although I've thought about it, is that our agents are spread out, but each individual agent travels humongous distances with each client. So sometimes they'll show things for each other. So that is like one like efficiency we've gained. But actually all of our agents are really used to like traveling all over and getting to know all the areas. And it's that to me is like, I feel like that's a lot of where kind of the magic for, I mean, on the buyer side, where the magic for our team is asking questions and sort of not always accepting the first answer, because we've seen so many people go through this process. So a lot of people will say, I want a place with a walkable downtown. And then when they actually move up here, they're like, I don't really care. Like I can drive, or they'll feel like a 15-minute drive is far. And when you're here, you realize it's not far actually. So there's just, I think that one of the things that's interesting is that there are things, and this certainly happened to me, and I had been up here on vacations and weekends and stuff for years. But when it came to like actually buying a place here, I had actually found my list the other day, my little list of like my wish list for the first home upstate. And it had all kind of weird stuff on it that today would not be important to me, but some closets would be. So
well, we've got a long list of questions that I want to get to, and some of that involve kind of how you pick your area. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I want, if you can, and I know real estate's hyper local, I think everyone's call really wants to know what's going on with the market out there. What are you seeing on the ground? What are you seeing with inventory? How quickly are things moving? Is there negotiability? Are there bidding wars? Like, what's going on?
Yes, to all of it. that is the market. We put up a house this weekend, and it was again like I don't know. I think we had 60 different sets of people come to this home in Hunter, and over 20 offers. The final offer is well over 20% above ask. And we see our buyers agents getting killer deals all the time. Like right before that, we have like a little happy channel on Slack, which is our internal communication tool. People were posting, got this house at ask for 5% down, got this house at ask. Oh, was it priced to get bids above asking? Honestly, it wasn't. We are pricing relatively conservatively now because we don't want things to sit, but it was not, it was not priced for this. And what's interesting is that there are, I mean, even though this is a huge geographic area, there are so few homes on the market in the best of times, and now inventory is super low, that there literally will be 2 or 3 homes that a lot of the agents on the team are showing in a weekend, and it'll be really spread out. One could be in Livingston Manor, one could be near Rhinebeck, one could be wherever, but that you can just like talk about them because they're so obviously cool houses. So this listing was one of those last week.
Well, I found whenever there was a listing that was Instagrammable or Instagram worthy, it seemed to get that kind of attention. And you know, the house that I purchased, there was 20 offers on it and it went 20% over the ask. I'm very well aware. But it was the third house that I bid on, and the other 2 were your listings as well. And they also went crazy over ask.
Well, yeah. And during that time period, we looked at the data, and it was on average, it was 19% over ask, but it was like either it had that like magic kind of, or it sometimes it didn't. But the big difference is that in 2022, 2021, well, particularly 2021, you could have a house that was like on a highway staring at a nuclear plant that needed work, and there would be multiple offers. You know, now anything that would normally be a deterrent for home buyers is I think is making things sit and really creating opportunities for buyers. Because if there's something like you don't mind changing wallpaper, or you don't mind being on like a country road versus like having more privacy, you actually can get some really good deals. I'm
kind of a testament to that right now, because the purchase that I'm making is a fixer-upper. Brad unfortunately refers to it as the money pit, but but yeah, I mean, it's a house that had been lingering on the market for months. So there are properties that are out there, and if you just have a little vision, or you don't need it to be Instagram worthy on day one, and you can imagine getting there, definitely don't be deterred by the idea that there's bidding wars, because I think there probably are still opportunities to be had.
I refer to Jessica's upstate house as her upstate project.
Her upstate project. I mean,
I like projects.
the last statistics that we have, unfortunately, the January ones are coming out in a week, but I just pulled up the ones for Ulster County Board of Realtors, which is not just Ulster County, it's the biggest multiple listing service in the area. And, you know, it was down year on year for December, almost 40% in terms of the number of sales. So that's a lot. That's like half of the closings that we had the year before. And the prices were finally down a little bit also. They were down about, here it says 5.7%. So
if you had a crystal ball, kind of, and we all wish that we did, because we get asked these questions all the time, like what's going to happen in the future? I mean, I'm sure this is the time of year where things start to pick up as the weather warms and whatnot. What are you predicting for this spring, summer?
Well, so there are some things that are going to be really location specific, and that is primarily going to be Airbnb regulations or short-term rental regulations. So we're seeing people in towns that are instituting more like really strict short-term rental regulations who are selling now. They have to sell, and it's much harder to buy. It's actually much harder to sell a home where you can't do short-term rentals at all. Like, not that everybody wants to be an investor and rent it all the time, but like the idea that you couldn't do it, like not, you know, like, or if you like needed to, if times were tight or whatever, you stay in your place in Brooklyn for a little bit and rent it out for a few weeks. I mean, anybody, and I will, you know, again, say that this is all 30 days and over is fair game everywhere still. That does not count as a short-term rental. But that is the thing where we're seeing little pockets of, if you don't want to do short-term rentals, there are some really sick houses coming on the market at better prices because they were short-term rentals, which means they probably are all fixed up and nice and cute, and they might even be sold furnished. And now you have an opportunity. Overall, I think that, you know, it depends a bit on interest rates, but I think that I don't know. I mean, it's so hard because there are also areas where so many new things are coming up here. So we have, I mean, both like super cute restaurants and shops and things like that. But there's also a huge cannabis company that like production facility that's coming to Ellenville that's going to have over 500 jobs that are going to be also at managerial level and all kind of things. So there are some big economic development things that are happening, and there's some momentum. And what I will say is that even if this year stays a little flat, or even if it goes down a little bit, I don't see how we're getting to 2019 prices for the kind of homes that people really like,
We got a question in the chat that said, what are some of the towns that are banning short-term rentals?
I mean, it's a lot. So, I mean, our ones where they're difficult is Woodstock and Hudson and Rhinebeck and Olive Bridge. I mean, we have a huge spreadsheet that's one of the things that we kind of crowdsource with everybody, that is called like short-term rental rules and rumors, because we even try and, if we know somebody who knows someone on the town board who hears something, we just kind of keep it all in one place, because that's good to know if something's coming.
Yeah,
Also,
that's incredibly valuable information for sure. And I remember when I was purchasing my house, I was monitoring the board, basically the meetings and the minutes they would post what the meetings were about. So, there's some chatter on a lot of the different towns that these shifts are going to happen. So it's good to know that there seem to be opportunities in these towns where, if you're not so focused on Airbnb as a supplemental income, or that you're willing to do a little bit of work, it sounds like there are opportunities to get a property up there that's not going to be, a bidding war central.
well, and I think that you can also, I mean, the other thing is that because so in places, particularly places near skiing or on a lake or something, like we have not, seasonal rentals pretty much disappeared up here, like when Airbnb came, or close to disappeared, but I think that like month-long or seasonal rentals could come back with people who can't Airbnb it anymore. They can't do, less than 30 days. So I think that there are going to be ways that people kind of work around it. But yeah, I think there definitely are opportunities.
And just to talk about the Airbnb thing, I was actually very curious about this too, because when I was speaking with my attorney when I purchased my property, I was like, why don't they want, our money? We're going to come up here, we're going to bring money, we're going to spend money to towns, it's good for everything. And he said, Brad, I can't get a paralegal. They have to drive an hour and a half because they can't find anywhere around here to rent. And that actually, he's like, think about all of the shops that you like to go to in Hudson or in Kingston. Those people who are running those shops and the coffee shops and the restaurants, they're having a really hard time affording staying there. So that was really impactful for me to understand that. Because, as a property owner up there, and I do Airbnb my place, sometimes, I was like, well, why are they trying to stop this? But if you think about it a little bit deeper, it does actually make sense. And so there is logic behind it for these, these communities. They want their people to be able to live there and afford it.
Well, and I think that it is definitely a very complicated issue in a lot of ways, because one of the ways people can afford staying in some areas is by if they have like an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, or like a little guest house. And then they can actually, like, the taxes here are relatively high compared to some places, or inflation is going up. So somebody could rent out a little something who's been here forever. And that's great. And also, and I will say that the laws do, or the regulations do, tend to be targeted at absentee owners and people who are doing it like pretty much 100% of the time. The ones that are having regulations, usually a lot of them you can only do it up to 180 days, which is right on the cusp of where it probably makes it not work for most investors, which is what would make it work for someone like you, Brad, which is, and I think, I mean, to me, I think if you're literally, you are not there, I do think it's better to have people there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's better to have people in it's safer for your house for one thing, but also they are up there than, spending money in the restaurants and with services and things. But it is complicated, and it's more complicated, I think, in really in more of the urban areas here, or more.
And one of the things I wanted to point out to everybody who's joining the call right here, these are incredibly complex and also shifting situations up there with the rentals, but also the market. Everything is hyper local. And what's really, really helpful is, we all love looking at the Upstate Curious app. We all love going on Zillow or Trulia and seeing what houses are up there. That's great. That's fun. But if you are serious about learning more, potentially making a purchase up there, or wondering what it's like, I highly, highly suggest that you connect with Megan, and she'll put you in touch with the best buyer's agent on our team to meet your needs. I mean, I'm a real estate broker here in Brooklyn, And I used a broker up to purchase a property up there because I had no idea I needed a radon test or what a soffit was, or that I needed a chimney inspection or any of these things when I was purchasing a house. And Jessica can attest to that too. I mean, her upstate project, there's lots of things that I think she's learning throughout this process as well by having an agent up there too. So if you are serious and if you want an edge, you're not going to get a house if you go directly. It just doesn't work. You really need boots on the ground, experienced people who know the ins and outs of this, who know what towns or may have Airbnb restrictions or what towns might have Airbnb. So do yourself a favor. No question is too small. Reach out to Megan. She'll put you in touch with someone who's going to hold your hand through the whole process. And that is incredible. If you really want a home up there, that's really the only way you're going to do it.
Yes, you will become an expert on septic like I now am. I never wanted to know so much about where everything from my house went, but now I do.
Well, and it's so at our team, because we're the biggest team up here. So we do around 200 transactions a year. So we get to see a lot of like, what's it like working with different inspectors and attorneys and whatever. And we are like so rigorous about those lists. And like I said, I see Matt from CHB Inspections here, who's one of the few who is actually also our client and is one of the few who is like just stayed on our list and not like gotten kicked off because we started hearing bad things. And I, trust Matt to do all my own inspections. And yes, like the first time I saw him like shimmy under a house and talk about things or talking about like septic, or there are so many there, and it's honestly not that complicated. That's the God's honest truth, but it is overwhelming if you are not there with people that for us, a big deal with especially with inspectors is that they can explain that stuff to someone, because otherwise you're sitting there and you're just like glazed over and someone's talking about, oh, there's a dry well and there's a blah, blah, blah. And there's, some evidence of termite damage. And there's like it's really hard if you don't, I came from owning condos, I had a co-op condo. Like I didn't know what any of this stuff was.
Well, it's the same thing here in Brooklyn, and you're speaking this perfectly. You really do need a holistic team that's been vetted and that you can trust. And if you're going up there blind, you don't know which inspector is good, what lender is good, because lending up there is different than lending down here.
Yep.
And that actually speaks to my next point. Megan and Jessica and I had a call yesterday just to kind of talk about what we were going to discuss. And one of the things that she mentioned, which is really kind of resonant, she brushed on it when she said about the walkability. But a lot of times people from Brooklyn or the city go looking upstate with this criteria in mind based on their experience living here in Brooklyn. And how you live here in Brooklyn is not how you're going to live up there at all. So can you explain a little bit about that? And then I want Jessica to chime in about her windows too.
Yeah, it's just, I mentioned to these guys yesterday that, I got my license at 17. We were living in Colorado, originally from Chicago, and I never had a car. I probably rented a car twice before moving up here. And that was one of my biggest concerns and biggest fears. And I actually hired somebody. It was so funny. I hired someone to teach me because I thought we were going to be here part-time. So I got a driving school person, whatever, in Brooklyn just to go up and down the FDR. I was like, this is terrifying. And her constant remark, literally the only thing she cared about is that I let no one in front of me. She was just like, you've got to get closer up to the other car. Otherwise everybody's coming in. I was like, this is literally it was like tailgating 101 or advanced tailgating. I was like, I don't need to know how I get killed on the FDR. I've got a few more minutes to go slowly, but yeah. So it's so that's one of those things that I love driving. I will just get in the car. I miss that. That's one of the big things I miss about not working with clients anymore is driving to listing appointments and driving around with people, because it is gorgeous and there's no traffic and you never have any problem parking. So it's literally the easiest thing. Winter, no big deal. The plows are out at 5 a.m. They're out all night plowing,
And
so.
For walkability, we have walkability a lot. That's one of the things that we value here in Brooklyn, but oftentimes when you're up there, the thing that most people are trying to connect to is nature or something else, getting away from that connectivity.
Well, also, I feel like I mean, this sounds so stupid, but well, I don't know. I think it's true though. Like you get so used to driving that like now they're like, I used to walk, we lived in Clinton Hill. I had an office in Dumbo and I would walk every morning. And it was my like lovely little walk and I'd come back at night. And I had like, I don't know, 40 minutes or something. And now it's like, if something is like 10 minutes and it's for a practical reason, it's like, I'm getting in my car. If someone will show me like a trail on a mountain, I'll go for 2 hours. That's great. But like, it's like, ugh, I have to use these things for practical reasons. I stuff my
So
car full of groceries. I get the sparkling water and I get the milk and I just go home. Great.
So my like Brooklyn mind in searching for this home upstate, I'm now doing this big renovation project and I'm walking through my new home with the builder, and it has a ridiculous number of windows, which is both it's positive and it's negative because they all have to be replaced. So we're walking around and I keep saying to the builder, I say, you could just close up those windows. Like, let's just put some plate glass in there. I mean, I'm never going to open the windows because my frame of reference is being in the city. And like, I don't really open my windows very much because then that lets in the noise and the smells and, a very like sealed off existence. But of course, in the country, you're going to want to open the windows. And so they're all laughing at me, I'm too city still. I still haven't like settled into the new home. So anyway, that's my little anecdote, but I think you're right. Like the list that we all have, or the frame of reference that we all have of what we're looking for, is going to change when you're actually there and you're living the experience. And so being flexible on what you're looking for is important, because it might shift as you're out there house hunting and say, oh, wait, I don't really need this walkable town, or I don't really need a house that has all the windows sealed off.
And one of the things that we've been saying too with our clients, even here in Brooklyn, is we ask them, what are you looking for in a property? And they'll give us a list of different things. And I think Megan and her team are really great at this too. They don't just take your list for face value, they ask the why. Why do you want this? Why do you want this? And why do you want that? And by asking the why, you get to parse between the words to find out what's really going to fit and work for you. And you may have started in Kerhonkson, or you may have started in Hudson, but by figuring out what your true needs are, they may be able to guide you towards something that's really going to be a good fit for you. And that's invaluable. I mean, there's so many, Trulia, Zillow, all those things. They can provide data, but what we do, or what we aim to do, is to synthesize that for you so that we can help elevate your experience and get you in the spot that's going to be best for your life fit.
I want to move on to a couple other questions. Some of these have come up in the chat. We did a little polling beforehand, and this was a common question as well, is location. I guess, how does price vary as you get further and further from the city? Is that a thing? And also considering public transportation. I mean, we have clients that bought a house upstate that didn't know how to drive, so they wanted to be near the Metro North Amtrak line on the east side of the Hudson. So maybe you can talk a little bit about pricing in relationship to location, and are there any kind of like hidden gems in there that nobody's thinking about?
I know so many good questions here. Okay, so what I would say is that it is true that generally the further you get away from the city, the cheaper it gets. That's like a general true statement. Not always, not in every direction. There's some special exceptions. But, one of the areas that we are seeing a lot of value right now, I think, is, I would say not that anything is like totally undiscovered, but Greene County, Delaware County, Schoharie County, which are on the west side of the river, and especially Greene County, you can be right across the river from Hudson. I saw someone, I think she's moving to Athens, and some other people had mentioned Catskill. Like those are still like relatively lower prices and lower taxes than a lot of places. Delaware is like Andes, Bovina, Delhi. People have probably heard of some of these things. Schoharie County is way fewer people have heard of. It's like, but it can be like very beautiful open mountains and, you know, kind of farmland. I think that it happens a little bit less. It's a little bit less true on the eastern side of the river because you start to get so close to the Berkshires that it like gets, you know, kind of gets like expensive again when you get to, not expensive, but like Ghent or places that, you know, Chatham are not super inexpensive. I do think that there are, gosh, you know, honestly, there are just, what I would say is, I don't know if there are like, I mean, I guess it depends on what you think is a bargain. Like, because right now we can find prices, I think we can find some homes that would have been less expensive and some significantly less expensive than they would have been a couple of years ago for a variety of factors. If you are looking for homes that are less expensive overall, then also, you know, we still kind of steer people to Sullivan County, but some areas around there are, you know, Livingston Manor have gotten more expensive. In terms of the, you know, the big part of why I'm mentioning my side of the river, the west side of the river, is because there is not a train over here. And so that, you know, I think that is one of the things that might keep prices down a little bit more over here. There are buses though. So there's a bus that goes from Kingston to New Paltz. I mean, it goes from different places, Kingston, Rosendale, New Paltz, that goes, you know, then straight into the city, that goes really frequently. I normally don't love buses, and that is what I like to do. You can also sometimes just drive a little further than you think, depending on how often you're going to go. You know, like you could drive to, like, sometimes I'll drive to Poughkeepsie because I can get Metro North, even though that's an hour for me. Because it's just like, and almost to some extent, depending on where I'm going in the city. So if I'm going somewhere where it's going to be awesome to land at Grand Central, I'll think about that. I think it is pretty hard, I think, to live up here completely without a car. We do get those questions a lot. There are some places, like you could take a bus into Kingston and maybe walk, or like the train into Hudson and kind of walk to where you are. There's a bus to Phoenicia, but there's so much that you wouldn't be able to do, I think, that I don't know how that would work in the long term. That's what I would say. It would be a different kind of thing. I think that you can, like, you know, someone asked about do the prices vary based on town? Is it more based on amenities? So this is like, maybe the best way to answer this is like, how does pricing work upstate, actually, like more broadly? And a lot of it has to do, and this is why comps are very difficult to find. Like when appraisers go out, it can be pretty wacky, although it's been pretty good for the last little while. But a lot of so if you look at, like, there's sort of like two parallel markets. There's people who, you know, live here, raise their families here, have a job here, and they've been here. And that is people who might, you know, want it, but then they definitely need to be in a particular school district. They might want to be near their job. They might want to be, you know, they might want to be near family members. Then most of our clients are either they're working remotely or they're buying weekend homes. So that is why they're so flexible in location generally. And so what that means is that the house becomes very important and the location around the house becomes very important. So you could have an amazing home with a ton of character, and there's like, I don't know, there's just like neighbors next door that are like playing loud music and have like a ton of indoor furniture on their front lawn or something. You know what I mean? And you're going to be like, that feels less comfortable for me. Or you have like a mediocre house, but the way you get to it is like on a winding, gorgeous road, and the house looks at a waterfall. So that area, like, it's not just like location, but it's the setting of the home becomes so important upstate, because a lot of people, what people are really willing to pay for is character and that setting. Honestly, like, there's a lot of different locations, and it can be pretty confusing sometimes, but that's why when you talk about Instagrammable homes, it's like there's these certain things that have characteristics that you can't always tell on Instagram, because you're not, you know, driving, you know, you're not taking the drive up and seeing that either it's hideous or amazing in the last 5 minutes. That stuff makes a big difference here. It really does. So
Speaking of Instagrammable homes or just super photogenic homes, we've gotten a bunch of questions about building your own home. I know that's the dream for so many people. Can you talk a little bit about whether this is a cost-effective thing to do? Because I think that's always the big question mark of, am I doing this because I just want what I want, or am I doing this because it's a way to save money? And, a little bit about the process. I mean, we've heard so much about, delays of inventory, of, materials and, backlogged contractors. Are you seeing that upstate too?
Yes. And I actually Matt came and inspected this shell of a home that we own in Sullivan County that has the most amazing views ever. And we were just kind of waiting to fix it up and waiting. And had we done it then, it probably would have been around 150 per square foot to fix up. And now it's probably 350. It's literally that different. It is wild. And some people so here's the kicker for those of you guys who want to build, if you want to build a simple home, you're just I just want to be simple and modern. That is the most expensive kind of building because everything has to be perfect. They can't just throw up trim and hide all their messy corners. So we're routinely hearing people getting quoted more to build beautiful modern homes, 600, 650, 700 a square foot. And that is, that gets pretty pricey pretty quickly. It was never, as far as I know, I don't think at least the time I've been here, which is only 6 years, it has always been significantly more expensive to build than to buy. Now that prices of homes that, exist have gone up some, that may be a little bit evened out. But so, as you said, so have the cost of materials and labor. The time it takes is, I would say that you would want to estimate at least a year, especially if you haven't found land, and probably a year, maybe more like a year and a half. But it depends on, this is where it depends so much on the lot that you find also. And this is where the stuff that you find out in inspection can get really expensive. Someone asked about what are surprises. You could have, I don't know, they could go and dig your well and you think it's going to be fine. And it, instead of $10,000, it's $30,000. Or there are things that are really can be a lot more, or there's more bedrock where they thought there wasn't going to be bedrock. And so the excavation costs just get to be enormous and delays happen. We are working with a company called Huts, Huts, and Huts does a good job of, and we can put you in touch with those guys also, or you could just reach out to them. But it's just Huts, Huts, and they have land on their website, including one of our lots that they've sort of vetted. And so then some of that work is kind of a little bit done for you, and they have designs that already exist, so they have a better sense of what the costings will be for sure.
They have a really good Instagram page that every once in a while will post just a picture of land with the outline of it, and it'll say, difficulty, medium, easy, hard, and it'll tell you a little bit about it has a water line, it has a septic or access to municipal water, and that's a really helpful. It's fun to geek out at for sure.
They have a lot of good stuff. And actually, I'm looking, there's a lot more questions about, are there areas to avoid due to poor drinking water? No, honestly, well water, I will say, is one of those things that seems really mysterious till you live here. And then you stop thinking about where your water comes from. You just turn on the tap and are this is water, or, do you flush your toilet, or pretty much almost all the water, not all of it, but a lot of homes need to have some kind of water treatment because the water is too hard, too soft, too much iron, too much whatever, it usually needs a little zhuzhing. Not always, but very often. So it's not you got a bum house because you need a water treatment system. That's just one of the things that kind of happens. So it might have it, you might want it.
Are there construction loans up there as well? That's a question that I wanted to have, because we have that here in Brooklyn sometime, and that's really helpful. They lend on what the final value of the house is going to be so that you can buy the land and build the house with a loan.
Yeah, so you would basically find the land and then say, here's our exact plan. You have to it's fine, contractors will do it, but you have to specify every single detail. Every single detail. And then, they do the appraisal based on the final, the final value of what you have planned. And then they go back at the end and go you know what, Brad, you told me this was going to be 4 bedrooms and it's only 1 bedroom. So like we're taking off some points, or you put in an extra pool. Amazing. And I would say new construction, the towns are, for new construction, the towns I think are all, I would say that they're relatively similar, and that there are pretty clear guidelines. It's more like sometimes things where you want to do something a little weird, where things get tricky, but that just depends on the town. I mean, and by weird, I can't even think of what I would mean. Like having something where that requires a variance. Like the best place for your guest house is too close to the road, according to your zoning laws. And so then you have to go through something, and then it really just depends on who's making up the town boards and things at that point in time. And these are tiny, I will say, these are tiny, tiny towns and tiny governments and hamlets. And so we always tell clients, like, if they have a question like that about a home, we encourage them to call the town people directly so they can hear like directly what they're saying. Because sometimes they'll, like, if you ask in an email or something, then you get this really formal legal response. If you get them on the phone, they'll be like, oh yeah, we always say that, but we never really check it. Or they say like, yeah, and we're super sticklers on that, and we will like bring down the hammer on you guys. So
I think that's a really good. Well, yeah, I was gonna say that's a really good point. Like I got a checking a bill in the mail for my water bill. I was like, okay, and I saw that I had to mail it down, and the address was down the street, like literally down the street. So I wrote down a check and I drove down the hill and I knocked on the door, and I met the 2 ladies that run the whole water for the county, and they were lovely. And I handed them my check. They're like, "Oh, you're Brad. You bought the old Stevers house up there." I was like, "Yeah." It's different than here in Brooklyn. Like, you're getting direct access, which is pretty cool.
And I actually I went to the town board myself, like just walked in, went from office to office. I went to the tax assessor to find out what the taxes would be when I closed. I went to the zoning office, the building office. I wanted to know information about the big lot that's backing up to my property, which is a former gravel mine. So, they pulled out files and they told me information just in person. So
Jessica learned a horse farm's going across the street.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, it is a small town feel. And I think the more you do to kind of like personalize the experience, like those are people you're probably want in your back pocket anyway, you want that nice relationship with them. So I was like, should I bring them some donuts or something?
And it's the same, honestly, it's the same with your neighbors. Like we made a mistake this year. Like our neighbors here are fantastic, and we have a little rental property that we use also. Like it's weirdly it's our Sullivan County vacation home from our Ulster County home, and we put in a new septic. Our septic failed, and we put in a new septic, and we didn't talk to our neighbor about it. Like Rob, like we couldn't reach her in time, and then she got super mad. She was like, it's too close to the fence. And we were like, it's exactly where it was. So it's a repair of an existing septic, which normally in Ulster County isn't a problem. And our contractor normally works in Ulster County. So there's one hint of what you don't want to do. And so she called the town, and the guy from the town was like, I would never, if she had not called me, I do not care. Do you know what I mean? She's like, but now that she called me, you have to move your septic system. And I was like, wow. So even just like that, like, I think I always thought Brooklyn was very like super neighborly, but here you only have like 4 people right around you. So it's not bad to get to know them.
I have one question about taxes that might, Jessica said something that's relevant. Can you tell us a little bit, when you purchase a house that, let's say someone bought a long time ago for $200,000 and then you buy it for, let's say $600,000.
Yeah.
What does that do to your taxes? And does that depend on where you buy the house?
Yeah, so that is a great question. We get asked that all the time, and it is supposed to do nothing to your taxes. That would be like considered a spot assessment, like where they're not supposed to change the taxes, or they're not changing the taxes. They're changing the assessment of your home, like the market value, what they consider the market value. They're not supposed to change it just because of a change in sales prices. That is actually technically illegal. But there are a couple ways that this can happen. And one is that every X number of years. And when I say X, I really mean X, because some towns could do it every, like have not done it for 30 years. Some towns could do it in, every 5 years, they do a townwide reassessment. So a lot of towns here, because the prices have gone up, have done a reassessment of all the homes in the area. And then that's when they're going to say like, okay, your home, it was, we had it down as 250. If you bought it for 600, we're going to say it's probably like 500 or something. But the weird thing about that is that, they're also often, they don't even do that. Like because it really is supposed to be based on material changes to the home also. So where you do see the taxes go up right away is if you add square footage, if you add bedrooms or bathrooms, if you add a pool. When our house was listed, they didn't know that there was a fireplace here. And so so things like that, where the town didn't know it was here and now they knew, they saw it in the listing. And so we got a bill saying, you guys, we're adding $30,000 of value or $10,000 of value to your home, which, is $10 a year or something in extra taxes. But the weird thing is that if everybody goes up together, if your house was 500 and then they have a reassessment and it goes up to 550, for example, they did the reassessment in our town, our taxes didn't go up because they also have caps on how much they can raise taxes. So basically you had to go up disproportionately. So if you went up 10%, which was the average in the town, your taxes stayed the same. So it's kind of a complicated issue. Honestly, the most useful thing I can tell you about taxes up here is that, yes, they seem insanely expensive compared to like Brooklyn. Facts. Also, they are largely based on on the square footage, bedrooms, and bathrooms. So if you don't want to pay taxes, just get a small house. That is like literally the key to it. And if you don't want to like risk ever having higher taxes, just get yourself a cute little house. But like once you start to get those bigger houses, even because they don't care, the assessor doesn't care if it's cute or not cute, in my opinion, or whatever. They're like, it's a very blunt instrument.
One thing I wanted to mention, because of the, it's sort of a deterrent on the new construction, on the building your own home, from what we talked about. But I see, and we actually have a client who has a big project upstate, and I'm sure you know of other developers upstate that are doing projects. Maybe they don't have the houses built, they have a spec house, or that they have the ability to build houses. Yep. Is that another route that you see people going, like for those people that want that modern house?
Yeah. And I just put the link for Huts there. So here's what I would say is that so is there, somebody just wrote, if you find land you like, is there one kind of expert to call to tell you whether you can build what you're hoping to build, or is it a bunch of experts? And that is like a great question. And this is why, if you find land that has already been engineered and like there's been, it adds a lot of value to know the answers to those questions. To say we've done a perk test where they literally just basically put water in the ground and see how fast it goes through the soil to see, how the septic's going to be built. There's all kinds of stuff that you might be able to do during a due diligence period with land, but it's expensive also, you know what I mean? So you will have to get like an engineer there. You're going to have to get contractors there. The difference between like, honestly, like even just a driveway that is straight and flat and a driveway that is like curly and whatever, is that can be huge amounts of money, like tens of thousands of dollars. So that's a little dramatic. Although I did have a friend, he bought land up here and ended up finding out his land was partially wetland. The only place to really put his driveway meant he had a $65,000 driveway. Wow. And he bought land to buy, he did it to buy something cheap. So to me, what I would say about that is, land, building a house is not for the faint of heart, especially if you're going to be doing it from a distance and you've never done it before. I think it's pretty stressful. So one of the other ones that we work with is Catskill Farms, which also has like kind of a certain number of designs. And then there's great ones like Upstate Modernist or Studio MM, who have like really, beautiful, more luxury homes that can get the job done. But otherwise, if you just have like a design, you need to find an architect, you need to find the land, you need to find the contractors. It's a lot. Like it is even hard for us. I've been here now for 6 years. Lord knows I have access to as tons and tons of people who I can ask for help. And there will be times when I am just like, very bummed because I can't find a plumber to do something, so those are kind of like facts. Someone has asked, Lexi's asked a couple of times about the Airbnb restrictions, and I was just wanted to answer that is already happening. So as towns are starting to put those into place, that is starting to happen. What is the next interesting piece that will make it happen more, I think, is when towns start enforcing it more. So a couple of towns, and I can't remember which ones, have now, I think Hurley and maybe, I can't remember, but either way, they're paying a company, like a consulting company, to match the Airbnb listing with the addresses somehow. And so it's like, once they do that and they start to fine you and tell you have to stop this, then, because I think a lot of people don't even know that it's happening. Honestly, they just they're not like obsessively reading local papers like I am. So
well, we have the same, we have restrictions coming here in New York City too. So, it's happening all over the place, and, hopefully people figure it out before they get hit with big fines. There have been a bunch of questions in the chat about topics that, we would love to be able to discuss. Cool. Things about community and schools. Those are perfect questions for the Upstate Curious app. It's very hard to just give our opinions or Megan's opinions on what is the right school or the right community for you. That's just a personal decision. So take a look at the app. There's lots of ways to ask your questions and just get the audience of 6,000 plus people to give you that answer.
And we actually are going to start doing I talked with our head of compliance about how we could do a fair housing series of things about what it's like to have kids here. And what it's like to, different ages, like without necessarily being like, this is a good school district, that's a bad one, but just like literally like, what does it look like for after school programs? Like what happens in summer? How did you find a mommy and me group? Like, so we are going to start to do some of that. And I will say that here's if I could say one other super important thing is that you will find people here. If you want to find people here, you 1,000,000% will. You will find there are knitting circles and, standard nights at a particular bar, and there's restaurants you go to, and I have met 1 million more people here than I did living in Brooklyn. And it's just, I think it's largely because people just have more time also. Like they move up here to have that certain quality of life, or they're spending their weekend. And then you go to someone's house and you're over at their bonfire, and then they tell you about their friends, and that person asks you to go for a bike ride. And I see this happening with our clients all the time, and I love it. So
I want to speak to that as well, in the sense that I live in Bed-Stuy here in Brooklyn, which is actually a very friendly neighborhood. Everyone says hello to each other. Like I love living in Bed-Stuy, but we've owned this house upstate for less than a year. And because we go to the town of Hudson so often, and we walk in all the shops and the restaurants, and just by going to coffee shops and meeting, we have 2 kids, and the kids start playing with other kids. We have met so many people in the town of Hudson and the town of Philmont that when our friends or families come up and stay with us, we walk through the town and we say hi to, a half a dozen to a dozen people every time. And we'd start conversations. Everyone's like, are you famous? Like, do you know? I'm like, no, everyone's just friendly up here. Like we're on first name basis with like half the shopkeepers and all of the restaurateurs. It's really a wonderful, welcoming thing up there. And once you buy a home and be part of the community and you show your face, they see that, they recognize that, and they know you're not just a weekender, and you become a little bit more involved and welcome. It's really cool.
And
we're getting close
I
was just going to say, we're getting close to 9 o'clock. We're actually already a minute over. So I want to be mindful of everybody's time here, but I know we still probably have a couple questions to run through. The first one is, do you have much of a rental market? Like, can people just come rent for a year, or 2 years, just kind of not, instead of buying?
Yeah, that is it's so hard because there are so few houses, and there are very few rentals also. And that is a lot of people ask us that. What I would say is to go, there are not that many rentals even on the multiple listing services here. So what we recommend is that people look at places like HotPads, which is just like a rental thing, Craigslist, which tends to be less like dodgy in some places. And then listings project also, which is, I don't know if people are familiar with that, but there's there's a section for Upstate in the listings project. And I see my friend Laura's here, and she advertised for her place in Accord, to find a long-term tenant, and found a ton of people there. So it's hard, but not impossible.
And, most importantly, like we're here middle of February. Like if somebody's imagining getting into their amazing new home for the summer, like what should they be doing right now?
They should call us immediately, basically. Oh yeah, Katie, thank you, from our team. Our app does have rentals posted from time to time because we don't work with them. So we always just tell people post the rentals on our app. Yeah, the second you think that you might ever want to buy a home upstate is when I put our little questionnaire there, but just Megan at upstatecurious.com or info@upstatecurious.com. And yeah, you have these guys' information. I think that they you don't want to wait because there's too many things take too long. It takes 3 months generally from an offer to closing here if you're getting financing. And, we're at that puts you already in late spring if you find a house right now. But we'll want to talk you through different lending options. And we have a lot of great lenders who we work with, by the way, who are used to very weird creative financing. I think that I feel like 75% of our clients have some kind of a creative, job, or are entrepreneurs or self-employed, and they know how to work around that. So yeah, I would say that the earlier we get to stuff, the better. And then often, I think, Jessica, we talked about this. Sometimes we'll be like, okay, you're convinced you love this area. Amazing. Go stay there for a weekend, go to these restaurants, check it out. But also I think you're going to love this other area. So maybe do a day trip over there. And that's the fun part.
I think that's really good advice too, is if you want to explore, the best way is to go up and visit these places in person, get an Airbnb, go check out Hudson, Kingston, Saugerties, Woodstock, whatever you might, go over to Livingston Manor if you want to check out Sullivan County. That's what I did. I spent years going to different areas to kind of explore, and I decided I want to be in Hudson, so that was important.
And I decided I wanted to be between Woodstock and Saugerties, and I ended up in Gerlington. So,
and for me, I just cared about the house.
Totally.
It's not about the town, the location. It was just about having the summer camp getaway, as I'm calling it. and the distance from the city, because for so many people that will be the determining factor. And I think if you create a couple of parameters, that can be helpful.
Well, and we always ask people for us, how many bedrooms, a bathroom, square footage, that's just the start. We're mostly how do you want to spend your time? What do you hate about it if you're driving upstate? Some people are I never want to go over a bridge. Great. Other people are I don't care if it's longer, as long as it's mostly a beautiful drive. Amazing. Then we can kind of ask those extra questions. I think it's, I also will just mention that we're soon in the next few weeks going to launch our Upstate Curious guest houses, where our clients are going to get a steep discount for if they're coming for inspections, or for looking at houses, or for closings. And yeah, we're going to have 3 places in Sullivan County and 1 and 2 in Accord here. So
amazing. What an awesome perk.
Well, I think that what's going to be really helpful, I appreciate everyone for coming to this. If you download the Upstate Curious app, you're going to be able to ask a lot more of these questions. The other way to do this is to connect with Megan and her team. We're going to send out an email after this with a Zoom link so that everybody can watch this again. And if you have any questions, you can directly ask Megan and her team. I'm also going to include my personal information. I've purchased a home up there. Jessica's in the process right now. If you want our personal experience as Brooklynites who are Brooklyn realtors, what it's like to be up there, we're happy to do that. I'm also going to put into the chat area the Beyond Brooklyn events page. If anyone's curious about Westchester, Long Island, New Jersey, we have an event on the 28th. And also, if anyone is looking to know what the value of their property here is in Brooklyn, if you are leaving Brooklyn to go
smart.
It's important to get a value. Jessica and I would love the opportunity to be able to run some comps and let you know what your property is worth. But mostly, if you are interested in going upstate, contact Megan. We'll circulate her information tomorrow in an email, and she's going to help your dream come true.
Thank you guys all for coming. Thank you so much, Megan.
Megan, thank you so much. It's been such a fun trip.
I clearly love talking about this. If anyone wants to do a 7-hour webinar with me, and that will get into 10% of why I love living upstate so much, like we'll scratch the surface.
You're talking to the right person. I could do a 7-hour webinar too.
We'll do a weekend. We'll do a whole weekend. Awesome. Yeah, we are happy to answer other questions too. A few other questions about, even if we don't do rentals or help with builders or whatever, we often can connect you to the right folks, So always
having the right resources is really just so valuable. And same thing here in Brooklyn. Like, you really need the best attorney. You need a lender that can close on a house up there that's got some funky stuff going on it. You need an inspector that's going to be able to explain things to you. I mean, it really is so valuable to have that holistic curated team ahead of time. So,
and that's why we want to have partners like these guys in Brooklyn, because we realize most of our clients live there also. And so we want to make sure that we're covered on both ends of everything. So we want everyone to be in good hands.
That's the way to do it. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to end the recording, and everybody have